What is going on, people, and welcome to episode number 7 of Real Time with Dan. And of course, it's been a couple of weeks, but since then, so much has gone on. You know, we've had Prime Minister Boris Johnson come down and say to us, like the easing of lockdown procedures. There's been people arriving at the beaches again, of course, again, disobeying lockdown, and many others. But there's a lot more to it. So I'm also going to do a bit of a deep dive behind lots of people's reactions, behind the fact that he did slightly ease lockdown as a result, just for England. And we're also going to go over a few other bits and pieces here and there, and hopefully just unravel some more unknown facts. So anyway, let's go ahead and just jump straight into the first one. So start off. So Boris Johnson, 2 weeks ago, or maybe by the time this video goes up, it'd be 2 weeks ago, but about a week and a half ago, Boris Johnson announced to the nation that he was going to start to ease lockdown procedures as follows. He was going to allow us to do unlimited exercise each day. So there would not be the same old, like, one exercise a day. So you could theoretically drive off somewhere, and go for a walk. That sounded fair enough, and so it now means you can do it for as long as you want to. He also included the fact that we could also go and sunbathe. So that means you can go into a public park and sit in the grass, and you didn't have to exercise. And so that's only a couple of the conditions that he provided with us. And it's fair to say it struck a little bit of a chord with the nation, because a lot of people, I noticed, have very different opinions. Some said they agreed, others not. And others were very confused. And I will admit, even I thought that sounded a bit bizarre. Like, how could that be? Like, how can, for example, when he said you can sunbathe out in the sun, out in public, out in the middle of a public park, for example, that gave me a concern, because just like how we've been seeing a lot of reports of people at the beaches, like in Folkestone, Herne Bay, and I presume even Hastings. Like, I don't know, like, I'm just naming a few examples. And the fact is, the scenes are ridiculous. People need to understand, like, yes, we can now go out. We can technically go to a beach. But I see no social distancing even remotely happening. And it's ridiculous. I seriously do not understand it. And, well, my take on the whole thing is I can see where he's coming from. He's saying we now have got freedom to go out and, I wouldn't say do what we want to do. Like, we still need to maintain social distancing. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is social distancing is paramount. I mean, heck, just last week I went to go see my dad, and we had a little bit of a social distance walk around the woods. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But seeing what looked like several thousand people, in fact, the comments I saw on one news article even said it looked like it was the middle of August, because the car parks were so filled up, and there were so many other cars parked there just on the road, obstructing the way. It was ridiculous. And the fact is, like, beach supplies are beginning to sell out in major supermarkets. I've seen it. Honestly, it's ridiculous. And that's not to, again, say that, you're not allowed to. It's just meant to say, if you want to go to the beach, make sure you social distance. That's the bottom line. But there you go. And some other little bits of news here and there are as follows. So if I go ahead and give you a little bit of a live feed, here we go. So, and if I just go ahead and find one. Okay. here we go. So this is what I've found so far. And the bottom line of it reads, coronavirus, alarm as crowds flock to European beaches. And, of course, it says here, a surge in visitors to beaches in Northern Europe after coronavirus lockdowns were eased and temperatures rose has alarmed officials and experts. And they have good reason to say that because, as we know, the cases are going down. The cases and deaths are, well, the deaths themselves are sort of going a bit like this. They're really fluctuating up and down. 1 minute they're as low as 160. The next day they're as high as 300. Other days they could peak back up to 600-700, which is, of course, every single death is tragic. And to every one of those families who've had members of their household or members of their family pass away, you know, my thoughts and prayers are with all of you. And to those of you who are still fighting the virus in hospital right now, my thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. Of course, as we know, the deaths and the cases are still sort of, they're fluctuating around. The cases confirmed are actually beginning to go on the down because the evidence of social distancing working is there. But of course, there is still that point of alarm where this article is, you know, you can't bash it and say, oh, it doesn't really matter though, does it? You know, I'm immune. No, not really. You can still be a host for it and you could still pass it on to someone else. And it says right here, 3 towns in northwestern France shut their beaches on Wednesday because of the unacceptable failure of people to observe social distancing rules. So there you go. That's all the evidence you need right there. It just shows some people are not quite on board with it. So that's where I'm coming from. And it even says here, the number of confirmed cases of the virus around the world has now passed 5 million. But the number of new infections has been falling across most of Europe, which includes the UK. And that does not go to say, though, that there are some places that actually have had a couple of new outbreaks. For example, in Germany, they eased their lockdown, people got a bit too excited, and suddenly then deaths went up by about, I think it was 8,000. And I mean, that then called for an emergency of, I think it was around 50,000 new tests over the next couple of days. At least that's what I've seen. That's what I can visualize in my head. That's what I can remember. Don't quote me on that. And so other things as well. If I just have a quick look. It says here, the authorities in France reopened hundreds of different beaches last weekend for running, swimming and fishing, but not for sunbathing or picnicking. So, of course, obviously, Boris Johnson's words will not be affecting France because France, you know, they've got their own prime minister or they've got their own minister or whatever. Don't quote me on that. And obviously, you know, they were reopened for running, swimming and fishing. You know, that kind of makes sense, but fishing, I mean, you're going to just be sat there though, aren't you? I mean, oh God. Again, if anyone's going to quote me on that and say, oh yeah, that doesn't really make any relevant sense, whatever. So, here we go. Okay, here we go. And here's one here that I think you might be quite interested in. Coronavirus, UK track and trace delayed as ministers don't know how they'll get people to isolate. Now, what that is actually referring to is the fact that... So what this is actually referring to is the government announced recently that they were going to deploy like a new app. So essentially what it does, it will track people as they move around, and if too many are bunched together, then they can easily trace that and report back, and then that will mean the government is more aware as to what's going on. At least that's as far as I know. Now, again, please don't quote me on that. I'm just literally reading what's in the news. And it goes on to say, ministers are discussing whether to enforce isolation as part of the test, track and trace scheme amid concerns it will be difficult to get people to stay at home when lockdown measures are eased. And that's the thing, when you ease lockdown, people get a full sense of they get a full sense of freedom. as is said in the anti-freedom protest that happened in London just a week ago now. And to the person who made that protest a reality, I've got to seriously, big shame on you. Because the thing is, it's not about our own rights. It's about the fact that we're trying to stay safe. And why were you wearing a mask anyway? You probably had it and all. So seriously, you should probably think twice before you go out and start making allegations against the government over silly rights. Because the rights stand, as we all know, that, we shouldn't really be going out unless we are shopping for essentials. But we are allowed out for unlimited exercise, which is actually quite a big leap, to be fair. And that's the thing, like, we shouldn't really be bashing the government for what they're doing. Boris Johnson, he recovered from coronavirus. He had to deliver Brexit, or he's had a newborn baby called Wilfred, and we have got to seriously support him, even if you're not even if you're not a voter of the Tories. You've got to give him mad props. He's delivered all that to us, and and he's overcome the coronavirus, as I've already said. So how can we bash that? We can't. You simply just can't bash that. It's silly. So, and moving on, so back to the news. So senior sources inside government have told Sky News there is an ongoing conversation about how to ensure people stick to the new measures. And then ministers also want to find a way to persuade rather than force the public to stay at home, because of fears that heavy-handed measures would go down badly. In that sense, maybe it would have just been not worth easing the lockdown procedures so soon. And this is where everyone gets the wrong impression, because everyone just jumps on the bandwagon and say, oh yeah, we can now go out a bit more often, we can now do what we want. Not entirely, because, even I haven't gone out that much. I may have gone out for just a walk, or maybe just for a run, but I've not at the moment been. I haven't. Admittedly, I've not really gone any further than my local supermarket. That's probably about the furthest I've been, or maybe that's a lie. Maybe all the way down to another location just to go for a walk with someone else in another household, with the social distancing in mind. Now that is actually allowed. We've been told before that is, that's completely legal. No obligations, and, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. We can't bash anyone for that. But the thing is, it says here, to find a way to persuade rather than force. So that means instead of having the police coming and arresting or fining us, they'd rather just, encourage us to stay at home as much as possible under their new system, which is stay alert, prevent the spread, or something like that, and save lives, which is different from stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. That was the original slogan that the government announced during when they first initiated the lockdown. And of course, every day we always get updates from the government over at the either from the Prime Minister or from one of the ministers from Downing Street. And of course, they always update us on the different cases. And as I've already said, the cases and the deaths are still sort of all over the place. The cases are going down, but the deaths are still fluctuating up and down. So it's a questionable one. So a key part of the new tracking process is ensuring those who may have the virus stay away from others in a bid to curb the spread. That sounds blatantly obvious. Of course, that's exactly what everyone wants to do. Those that have got the virus need to be completely isolated from everyone else so that the spread is limited. And of course, the new system is based out on this figure called R, which is rate of infection. And that is actually, that's in relation to a new alert level system in terms of this epidemic, and it's on a 1 to 5 system. At the moment, we're in level 4, but we're slowly coming down to level 3. And basically, the higher the R, the higher the alert level is, and the lower that R is, then the lower the alert level would presumably be, or the quicker it will start to go down. And so far, apparently, we are around 0.7 and 1, which is slightly alarming, but at the same time, it is starting to slowly come down. But we can't be too sure. So my only word of advice is, can carry on staying indoors as much as you can, like as the government says. It may be boring, it may be hard in the head, it may be affecting you physically and mentally and in every way, shape or form possible. But the bottom line is, we cannot become too complacent. Like, that's the bottom line. Because, as we all know, even if you think you're invulnerable, there are people out there that are not. And that's why they're saying, even like the over 70s group who may not be classed as vulnerable are still being encouraged to stay indoors as much as possible and only get home deliveries and all that sort of stuff. And of course, we can't bash them for that. And moving back on towards the cases where there were other outbreaks, there was a region in China, or two actually, I think it was the northeastern regions of China. There were two, and they've now been placed on lockdown. It's not Wuhan where it originated, but it's in a place where there's about 100 million people. So, yeah, good idea. Make sure you contain it and make sure that the spread does not go to any more people. Like, it's ridiculous, And of course, we can't blame. We can only hope that, everything's under control, and hopefully this virus will start to wear off. But anyway, and this brings me on to another point. I think it was the last video, Captain Tom Moore, who is now, of course, Colonel Tom Moore, an honorary colonel from the 1st Battalion or something like that, who's now a colonel. He has now been granted his knighthood. And after raising £32 million for the NHS Trust, it really is, it's heartwarming. It's, the man does not deserve anything more or less. He absolutely deserves that, 100 million %. Like, I'm overwhelmed with joy. It's fantastic. The man deserves every bit of it, every bit of credit in the world. He deserves it. That knighthood he's super happy about it. And he even joked, I remember his quote was, "I hope the Queen is not too heavy-handed with the sword." Don't worry, Tom. I'm sure she'll be very gentle with the sword when she grants you that knighthood. And from now on, we'll have to call him Sir Tom Moore. But yes, anyways, congratulations. I can't say any less than that. Like, it's fantastic. And of course, as I mentioned in my last video, Aston Microphones, maker of the Aston Stealth, Origin, Spirit, and Starlight, have now come up with. I said there was an announcement, and that announcement was as follows: they have got a new project underway called Project Element. Now, this is meant to be a people's mic, so I'm not entirely sure what that means, but the bottom line is it's a microphone that's been designed from the ground up and influenced by the say of the public. So people like everyone like me, you, and everyone else who's managed to get their word in. Now, how they've done this is on the Aston Microphones website. If you sign up and submit a form, and all you got to do is vote for which vocals and which instruments sound better on different models. Now, of course, I'm not going to reveal what I said because, of course, that's my opinion. But now, of course, the voting stage for the first round is closed, and they're going to take that data away, and then as of the 1st of June, they're going to open up round 2. And presumably, they're going to keep doing this until they've got a microphone that sounds absolutely perfect to the ears and all around just fantastic, which is definitely very unique. It actually gives everyone a sense of, what they think the perfect sound is going to be. And I'm just hoping that it will, I wish Aston Microphones all the best. But in reality, is this a mic that I'm interested in? At the moment, not really, because, I'm happy with what I've got. I mean, I don't see much reason to throw this away. because I've been really getting on well with the Aston Stealth. The Aston Stealth in itself is just a fantastic microphone. And I do notice from time to time when I'm talking into, like when I'm doing these podcasts or when I'm doing these videos and I use this, I do notice that I tend to stray off topic a little bit. One minute I'm talking about, everything going on in the world. Next minute I'm going a bit geeky. And that's just me. Like, unfortunately, I am a bit of a geek. I have way too much stuff with me. And eventually I am probably going to be having to do a setup tour. But the reality is it's changing all the time. And in that 2-week absence that I've had time to make subtle little changes to everything here. And the thing is, it just makes me happy. Like, everything that's happened on this channel and everything that's going on this channel has happened for a reason. Because I've wanted to evolve. I've wanted to change up my content. I've wanted to make people happy. And I just want to, I want to enjoy myself, as every YouTuber should do. I don't want it to be a chore. And as I keep saying, when I start to become more, if I ever do become more successful, which I hopefully will do, I would very much like to, it's very hard to put it into words. I'd like to be able to have like a permanent fixture, if you know what I mean. So instead of having to set things up like I did in the intro and having to do things like that and then having to put it all away later because it takes me over half hour, 40 minutes, I'd rather have everything all set up ready, so I can just click everything on and then just in 5 minutes be ready to go. That would be the dream come true, which is why I said I wanted my own sort of recording space. But of course, that won't be happening anytime soon, as we all know. But, that's just something to bear in mind. And I do apologize if I'm looking this way. That's because that's where my monitor is. It was originally right there, but I just decided to move it. And I know that's probably not very important right now, but of course. And, oh yes, there's another thing. When I mentioned the EOS R5 last episode, we've now had a bit of a shout at what the price range is looking at, and it might not be 3,500 as we thought. It could be closer to 5,500. Now, £5,500 is a lot of money, but here's the thing. When you think about other cameras that shoot 8K video, they actually come to way more than that. I mean, 8K in a pretty much a mirrorless body, it's not a stellar deal by any means, but it is still, like, for an 8K camera, that's pretty darn ridiculous. Because, of course, 8K is one of the new, it's not a standard at the moment, but it is one of those new things that is becoming a reality. There are some 8K displays out there. 4K is now beginning to, 4K is almost, I think it could be considered the brand new standard, even though I still shoot full HD, which is miles away from that, and it's a different borderline. But 8K video, generally, if you're looking at a 8K, like an 8K cinema camera, those things can run you anywhere between, 20 to maybe up to £250,000. So you could be looking at literally the value of a house. Whereas, of course, like 5,500, you could probably get a Dacia Sandero for that. And heck, it does sound ridiculous. It is probably going to be one of the more expensive Canon cameras out there. It could even be tripping on the borders of becoming, going past their 1DX range, and of course they're getting into the boundaries of their cine range, like C100, C200, C3, 4, 5, any of them at all. And I know, again, I've gone very off topic here, but of course, that's just me. That's what this show is all about. And as I say, if this is not your style of video, I always have other videos up in the top corner of the video, as per usual. And I think on that note, I think I'm probably going to have to end it off there, because if I carry on, I think I'm definitely going to start getting carried away, and I'm going to start talking about something to do with aliens and other things like that. But anyway, and hopefully you guys do appreciate the fact that I am going to be, I am trying, but personal life is always, that's my first priority. If I'm ready to do these videos, I'm ready. If I'm not, I'm not. But anyway, so we'll leave it off there, And I want to say thank you guys for watching this video, and as always, I'm always looking for comments or submissions to the channel. Like, if you've got anything you want me to mention in the next video, just leave it in the comment or email me at dan.b.bryant@hotmail.com. It'll be down below in the description of the video. Just send it to me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible in the next video. And if you want me to mention your name, make sure you say that as well. And as always, make sure you guys are staying safe and make sure you guys are social distancing. And as always, make sure you click the like button if you enjoyed, and make sure you subscribe for more and hit the bell icon so you do not miss any videos. And be sure to share around with your friends. Check out my socials in the description. And anyway, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Real Time with Dan, and I will see you all in the next video. Take great care. See you next time.